Hey there guys, this is Richard, your host, with another marvelous video. In this video, we'll explore the unique and mesmerizing creatures and species found in the novel titled All Tomorrows, a billion-year chronicle of the myriad species and mixed fortunes of man. Published in 2006, this fine piece of work takes you on a remarkable journey through time, delving into a breathtaking future of human evolution, spanning from the near future to a billion years after that. Penned and illustrated by the talented Turkish artist C.M. Kozeman under the pen name Nemo Ramjet, All Tomorrows is an ocean of hypothetical possibilities. We encounter a multitude of future human species that emerged through natural processes and the artistry of some grim genetic engineering. These transformations are orchestrated by both humanity itself and a mysterious godlike extraterrestrial race known as the Q. So, without further ado, let's get this ride started. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Martians. Martians became a distinct species that evolved from human colonists on the planet Mars, exhibiting notable biological differences due to their extended exposure to the lower gravity of the red planet. These differences include increased height and slenderness, making them physically distinct from their terrestrial counterparts. But how did humans end up on Mars? Well, the colonization of Mars was driven by the urgent need to find new habitable environments, spurred by the environmental degradation and overpopulation crisis on Earth, which housed a staggering population of 12 billion people at the time. To render Mars hospitable for human settlement, the now politically unified Earth launched and executed its most ambitious plan. The initial focus was on creating a breathable atmosphere. This was achieved through the deliberate introduction of genetically tailored microbes, which gradually transformed the Martian atmosphere over the course of several centuries. Subsequently, artificial oceans were established to support genetically modified versions of terrestrial flora and fauna, providing sustenance for the planet's future inhabitants. Colonization efforts involved sending one-way ships filled with eager colonists to Mars. Over the span of several hundred years, the Martian society flourished, albeit lagging behind Earth in terms of economic advancement. In an effort to alleviate the strain on Earth's biosphere and ecology, industries with harmful environmental footprints were relocated to Mars. The establishment of Martian society led to a notable schism between Earth and Mars. Martians developed a distinct cultural and biological identity. A combination of genetic engineering and natural evolution in the Martian environment shaped their appearance. Driven by their newfound identity, the Martians eventually cultivated a strong sense of rebellion against humans from Earth. This sentiment permeated their culture through various forms of artistic expression, including music, movies, and literature. Mars was seen as the embodiment of progress, dynamism, and innovation, while Earth represented a stagnant past. Tensions escalated over a millennium, culminating in a significant conflict known as the Martian Civil War. Mars, imposing strict trade and travel restrictions on Earth, caused detrimental consequences for both planets. The Martian moon, Phobos, was destroyed, resulting in meteorite impacts on Mars, while devastating strikes on Earth claimed the lives of a third of its population. But eventually, Martian and Earthlings resolved to end the conflict after around 8 billion lives were lost. The two people joined hands and became peaceful. In fact, they started exchanging technology, and together, they mastered genetic engineering and created what later came to be known as the Star People. Star People. In the aftermath of the Earth-Mars Civil War, a new human subspecies was created, capable of adapting to the environments of Earth, Mars, and other newly terraformed planets. These modified humans had enlarged brains and heightened talents compared to their predecessors. Over the course of a few generations, the United Star People of Earth and Mars expanded their reach, colonizing Venus, the asteroids, and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Subsequently, they ventured beyond our solar system, embarking on interstellar colonization. Communication between the various Star People colonies remained robust, facilitated by ultra-fast communication methods despite the lack of face-to-face interactions. Through the sharing of technology and knowledge, the Star People established highly advanced societies across countless star systems. Technologically, the Star People had unparalleled advancements. During the era known as the Summer of Man, they harnessed cutting-edge technology that enabled the colonization of the entire solar system and beyond. While they initially abstained from developing weapons or armies, the discovery of potential alien threats prompted them to bolster their defensive capabilities. The Star People were known for their ability to transform local ecosystems on colony worlds, replacing them with genetically modified Earth-derived flora and fauna. A major turning point in the history of the Star People came in when they encountered fossilized remains of a creature they called Pandora on one of the worlds. It was an earthly dinosaur that stood apart amidst tripedal creatures with copper-based skeletons. This discovery served as an early warning, hinting at the existence of prior civilizations that had traveled the cosmos. Cognizant of the uncertainty surrounding the potential creators of the Pandora and their intentions, humanity began stockpiling weapons capable of cataclysmic power, including the capacity to destroy entire stars and annihilate solar systems. However, the Star People's encounter with the Q, a sapient and super-intelligent godlike species, proved disastrous. Offended by the notion of another race attempting to rebuild the universe, the Q launched a swift and merciless campaign, decimating or transforming every human-inhabited world within a span of less than 1,000 years. This devastating encounter with the Q brought about the collapse of the Star People's civilization and was only the beginning of a long chapter in the future history of humanity. Q. The Q were nearly 1 billion years old during the first encounter with the Star People. They would go on vast galaxy-spanning mass migrations, traveling from one spiral arm of the Milky Way to another. Proficient in the fields of genetic engineering and nanotechnological manipulations, the Q constantly augmented themselves and reshaped the worlds they encountered. And quite naturally, it's believed that they were responsible for the creation of Pandora. Driven by their religious convictions, the Q were determined to reshape the universe according to their own desires, considering themselves as gods in the process. They adhered to the agenda of some mysterious higher forces that opposed the existence of sapient life, perceiving it as a threat to the natural order. In order to achieve this and save sentient species from themselves, the Q altered sapient beings in accordance with their perceived transgressions. If you only had sapience, you'd be subjected to less grueling mutation, and if you resisted the Q, you'd be given a life far worse than death. These other species were regarded as objects to be reformed into practical or entertaining forms. While not driven by malice or hatred toward all other life forms, the Q were profoundly indoctrinated by their religious fervor and extremist beliefs. Technologically, the extent of their weaponry remains undisclosed, yet their ability to swiftly overpower nearly all Star People colonies indicates superiority over the Star People's weaponry, which in itself was fairly advanced. Notably, their genetic manipulation technology stood out as their most notable and advanced achievement, allowing them to transform existing life forms into diverse and varied forms, even stripping away sapiens. Biologically, the Q appeared as four-winged insectoid creatures, bearing a resemblance to dragonflies from Earth. They possessed a singular tentacle-like appendage used for grasping and manipulating objects. Their heads featured two eye stalks, protruding from each side alongside elongated mandibles. While their main torso had a skin akin to that of a human torso, their prehensile tentacle made their lengths 5 or more times that of a human. It is plausible that the known form of the Q represents an altered state resulting from genetic modifications undergone by their species at some point in the past, similar to the transformations that shaped the Star People from humans and Martians. Titans. The Titans inhabited a planet that had nothing but vast savanna plains. Sporting an elephant-like body structure with 4 limbs, these creatures diverged from the conventional trunk seen in their earthly counterparts. Instead, they made use of their elongated lower lip to manipulate objects. Remnants of their human ancestors lived only in the form of stubby thumbs on their forefeet, which, although functionless, served as a reminder of their evolutionary origins. But if you look at the face of a Titan, it does resemble that of an animated human. Notably, the Titans exhibited a remarkable level of intelligence among the various post-human species created by the Q. And trust me, there were not many species that were intelligent in the beginning. Despite their unwieldy physical form, they displayed surprising dexterity. This enabled them to engage in activities such as wood carving, the construction of colossal buildings, and the development of agricultural practices. The resurgence of language among the Titans allowed for the formation of myths and legends rooted in their rudimentary memories of their human past. In fact, the Titans were one of the few post-human species that could speak in a comprehensible fashion. While the potential for the re-emergence of human civilization from the Titans within a span of a few thousand years seemed plausible, it couldn't happen because an ice age abruptly terminated their fateful trajectory, and they perished before any significant advancements or before developing into a full-fledged civilization. Worms. The worms inhabited a scorching desert world that had been transformed into an even harsher environment by the Q's genetic modifications. These adaptations resulted in a landscape riddled with lifeless cities. Despite the inhospitable conditions, crystalline plants present on the planet generated sufficient oxygen in the atmosphere to support subterranean organisms. True to their name, the worms exhibited a physical form resembling elongated worms, spanning a length barely surpassing that of human arms. They also had small arms and legs specialized for digging through through the earth. Positioned atop their heads were a pair of diminutive black beady eyes, while their nostrils were located at the lower portion of their faces. Over the course of their evolutionary journey, they developed teeth, external ears, and a significant portion of the nervous system inherited from their ancestors. Additionally, the presence of either horizontal or vertical slits in the genital region distinguished the sexes, although clarity regarding which slit corresponded to males or females remains uncertain. Lacking the sapience observed in earlier human forms, the worms focused primarily on excavating the ground and consuming whatever resources they encountered, including members of their own kind, and at other times they could be found mating. Millions of years later, the once intense heat of their world began to subside, allowing for the resurgence of surface-dwelling animal life. In response to this environmental change, the worms underwent further evolutionary transformations, ultimately evolving into snake-like creatures called the snake people. The prey. The prey, a post-human species created through genetic engineering by the Q, originated from a colony of the Star People. They were the inhabitants of one of the earliest colonized worlds by the Star People. In contrast to their predatorial counterparts called simple predators, the prey adopted a herbivorous diet and demonstrated significantly lower levels of intelligence. Physically, the prey had bipedal locomotion with long double-jointed legs, reminiscent of avian anatomy. Their elongated faces featured pointed ears, while their bodies were predominantly hairless, except for their heads. Notably, their arms extended forward, exhibiting reduced thumbs that likely facilitated the grasping of plant-based vegetation. Although their specific dietary habits are not definitively known, evidence suggests that the prey primarily fed on shrubs and understory vegetation, rather than grasses. The predator. Over time, the predators underwent significant evolutionary changes that endowed them with distinct physical attributes and behavioral characteristics, enhancing their effectiveness as carnivorous beings in the Q-conquered worlds. Evolutionary adaptations resulted in the development of paw-like hands, equipped with switchblade thumbs, granting the predators increased dexterity and versatility. These appendages proved instrumental in their hunting endeavors. Additionally, the predators boasted formidable jaws adorned with a multitude of razor-sharp teeth, which further facilitated their predatory lifestyle. Large and sensitive ears enhanced their auditory perception, aiding in the detection of prey and potential threats in the vicinity. In contrast to their prey, the predators exhibited higher levels of intelligence, enabling them to become formidable hunters. Over time, the predators underwent further evolutionary changes, ultimately transforming into a distinct species known as the Killerfolk. Mantelopes. The Mantelopes, originally designed as singers and memory retainers by the Q, faced near extinction when their creators departed. However, a small population managed to survive and underwent rapid evolutionary changes that ultimately shaped them into a quadrupedal species that grazed the available grass and other such shrubs. Despite this, the Mantelopes retained their human-like consciousness, now confined within bodies that lacked the ability to shape and manipulate their surroundings. So, you could imagine the frustration that the early Mantelopes had. It kind of reminds me of the 2014 movie Tusk, in which the protagonist was transformed into a human walrus. Over centuries, herds of Mantelopes would express their poignant lamentations through melancholic songs, conveying their frustration at being unable to utilize their intelligence for meaningful purposes. As would have been expected, the absence of practical advantages in their altered physical form prompted a devolution of their brains. Gradually, over the course of the ensuing millennium, the Mantelopes transitioned into simple, non-sapient grazers, and their once cognitive capabilities slowly faded into nothingness. Bone crushers. Originally bred for the striking colors of their beaks, which were in fact fused teeth, the majority of these pets perished when the Q left. However, a resilient few managed to adapt and evolve, giving rise to a diverse array of herbivorous and carnivorous species with specialized beaks. Among them, bone crushers stood out as the first to attain sapience, standing at an approximate height of 3 meters. The bone crushers had humanoid forms accentuated by clawed thumbs. Their name derived from their distinctive, heavy beaks, which had evolved to excel in bone crushing, particularly for the consumption of deceased animals. As the bone crushers progressed in their evolution and intellectual capacity, they established a civilization that incorporated peculiar customs. Notably, one such custom involved the display of affection through the act of defecation upon others. So, yeah, if you loved someone enough, you pooped on them. In fact, the bone crushers even communicated through pooping. The limited availability of carcasses on their exclusive food source imposed natural constraints on their population growth. Over the course of several millennia, their medieval society ultimately faced extinction, and the bone crushers couldn't really realize their full potential. Swimmers. These unique beings initially required specialized attendants for their care and maintenance due to their domesticated nature. Among the diverse forms of swimmers were the eel-like individuals, colossal whale-like behemoths, decorative beings capable of propelling themselves through water by expelling water through hypertrophied mouths, as well as brainless wallowers that served as a source of sustenance on an oceanic planet. However, the departure of the Q led to the extinction of these post-human species, but a handful of swimmers managed to survive as they underwent only minimal mutations, retaining some semblance of their human ancestors. These surviving forms lacked artificial gills and had hand-like flippers, while their hind flippers remained paired, resembling legs. Despite lacking a sapient understanding of what the other swimmers said, they did engage in communication among themselves. Over the course of thousands of years, these resilient swimmers underwent further evolutionary changes, gradually adopting more streamlined bodies and honing their hunting skills, and they eventually succeeded in domesticating aquatic organisms, giving rise to a new phase of their existence as tool breeders. Tempter. The Tempters somehow managed to survive even after the Q left the scene. The Tempters exhibited distinct characteristics like a pronounced sexual dimorphism and a eusocial nature. The female Tempters had towering cone-shaped bodies measuring approximately 2 meters in height. Positioned at the apex of their form was a beak-like structure, complemented by a pair of eyes on the sides. Half of their bodies remained buried in the ground, rendering them immobile and their limbs functionally useless. Intriguingly, tube-like vaginal openings extended from the surface, enabling them to reproduce. Despite their immobile state, the females exhibited a notable level of intelligence. In contrast, the male Tempters were significantly smaller than their female counterparts and also had humanoid bodies distinguished by beaked mouths. These males displayed limited intelligence and were susceptible to control by the females through vocal and pheromonal signals. But then, are humans any different? Anyway, by manipulating the males, the females coerced them into tasks such as procuring food and providing protection against predators. Within the Tempter society, mating occurred exclusively between the females and the strongest, most obedient males. This involved the male entering the female's tube-like vagina for ejaculation. While male offspring predominated, certain periods witnessed the birth of female offspring, which were subsequently planted elsewhere by the males. Unfortunately, the Tempters died when a huge meteorite hit their planet. Lizard herders. The lizard herders retained humanoid bodies while undergoing slight modifications in their brains that rendered the evolution of heuristic learning impossible. In other words, they failed to learn things by observation or trial and error. Furthermore, their planet was devoid of any natural predators, so they all the more didn't need any advanced intelligence. Despite their limited intelligence, the lizard herders instinctively engaged in the practice of herding a particular species of herbivorous reptiles. These reptiles had evolved from pet lizards introduced to the planet by the lizard herders' interstellar ancestors, and the favorable climatic conditions present on their homeworld were more of a boon for their growth. Over time, the reptiles diversified into various species, capitalizing on the planet's environmental factors. Among the reptilian species that emerged, the Solusapient distinguished themselves by eventually attaining sapience. This significant development led the Solusapient to actually domesticate the later iterations of the lizard herders. Thus, a symbiotic relationship formed between the two species. The Colonials. The Colonials faced the brunt of the Q because they offered valiant resistance against the Q invasion and endured a particularly harsh punishment as a result of their defiance. They were subjected to a grotesque transformation, their bodies contorted into a brick-like shape, rendering them immobile. Their existence became tied to the arduous task of filtering the waste products generated by the Q. Biologically, the Colonials manifested as cuboid organisms, lacking mobility yet possessing specialized orifices for both filter feeding and reproduction. And as for reproduction, they used both sexual as well as asexual means. Despite their physical alterations, they retained a high level of intelligence which would remind them of how they were punished and how lowly their life now became. However, their nervous system had been reduced to its most rudimentary form, amplifying the anguish inflicted upon them as they served as living filtering devices for the Q over a staggering duration of 40 million years, a most sorry state for any organism. Flyers. The flyers were one of the most proficient avian species found across numerous Q-inhabited worlds. Among these, one notable subgroup comprised the ancestors of the hand flappers from a different world. However, the flyers under discussion resembled pterosaur-winged monkeys and exhibited a lesser degree of divergence from their ancestral form. A key advantage had by the flyers was their specially designed star-shaped heart. This unique anatomical feature facilitated the efficient transfer of oxygen from the lungs to the bloodstream, granting them enhanced aerial capabilities. Consequently, the skies of their world teemed with a multitude of flying species representing a diverse range of forms and functions. In fact, one particular lineage managed to evolve a substantial brain size without compromising their ability to fly. eventually giving rise to the Terra Sapiens. While some species of flyers gradually lost their ability to fly, they compensated by capitalizing on the advantages conferred by their supercharged hearts. These evolutionary adaptations allowed them to outcompete other organisms, leading to the emergence of ground-dwelling and swimming species with remarkable size and agility. Spacers. The Spacers were among the only post-human beings who successfully escaped the invasion of the Q by constructing enormous generation ships from hollowed-out asteroids. These ships were carefully designed to contain sufficient air and water for the survival of their inhabitants, but lacked gravity. While other attempts to evade the Q invasion were made, the Spacers were the sole group to achieve success in their endeavor. Utilizing their expertise in genetic engineering inherited by the Star People, the Spacers underwent adaptations to acclimate to a life devoid of gravity. This adjustment proved to be significantly more relaxing compared to living on planetary surfaces, which had been fraught with rebellions during the Star People's initial attempts to colonize the galaxy. As a consequence of their weightless environment, the limbs of the Spacers developed elongated and slender structures with thin and hollow bones. Additionally, their circulatory and digestive systems underwent compression to mitigate the risks of heart-related complications and congestion. Interestingly, their method of locomotion involved expelling jets of air through their modified anuses. Well, they kind of farted to move around space. Over time, the Spacers further evolved and remade themselves, ultimately transitioning into a distinct post-human species known as the Astromorphs. Ruin Haunters. The Ruin Haunters, known for their striking resemblance to humans. Having said that, notable variations existed in their head and neck. Ruin Haunters had robust necks and slightly elongated faces, and had large, drooping, rounded noses. Additionally, they lacked hair on their heads and featured small triangular ears. Despite their reduced cognitive capacity, akin to that of chimpanzees or gorillas, the Q didn't implement extensive measures to prevent the re-emergence of sapience. Inhabiting a world where the ruins of the Star People civilization were preserved by the Q, the Ruin Haunters had access to the ancient Star People tech, which they diligently studied. Leveraging this knowledge, they rapidly advanced and constructed an advanced civilization that swiftly rivaled the achievements of the Star People. However, the Ruin Haunters often replicated Star People technology without attaining a comprehensive understanding of its underlying principles. This reliance on imitation, coupled with the intense political pressures arising from their rapid technological development, resulted in 5 world wars, 2 of which involved catastrophic thermonuclear exchanges. These conflicts ultimately fostered unity among the survivors and propelled them to surpass the technological achievements of the Star People. Subsequently, the Ruin Haunters developed a sense of entitlement, perceiving themselves as the sole inheritors of the Star People's legacy. This belief system, however, created tensions and conflicts with other post-human species. When confronted with the imminent threat of their sun's rapid expansion, a challenge beyond the capabilities of their technology, the Ruin Haunters made a momentous decision to transform themselves into the Gravitors. Gravitors. The Gravitors originated as highly advanced cyborgs, housing the minds of the Ruin Haunters within their robotic chassis. However, with the advent of cutting-edge quantum computer technology, the Ruin Haunters successfully digitized their consciousness, shedding their organic components entirely and transforming into a fully cybernetic species. The Gravitors exhibit a remarkable range of diverse forms, although their most commonly observed form resembles a smooth mechanical sphere featuring a central red optic, accompanied by 3 small apertures beneath it, potentially serving as speakers or sensors. Other Gravital variations include a flat wall-like form and a spacecraft-like structure, which also have similar optical and sensor configurations as the spherical variant. Despite their capacity for reproduction, the process involves the construction of new gravitals rather than traditional biological procreation. It probably involves advanced methods that involve the transfer of mind programs from parent gravitals to their offspring. The gravitals had the ability to manipulate gravitational fields, which also help them to control objects and navigate by controlling gravity itself. While some gravitals exhibit physical appendages such as robotic tentacles or spindly arms with mechanical hands, their entirely cybernetic nature allows them to adapt and survive in virtually any environment. Like their organic predecessors, the Gravitors maintain a persistent delusion of being the sole inheritors of the Star People species. The transition to mechanical beings has instilled within them the belief that life is a privilege rather than a right, rendering them unable to comprehend the value of organic life. Nevertheless, they retain a cohesive society akin to the Ruin Haunters, forming familial units, friendships, political alliances, and even religious practices. Curiously, the Gravitors display an intriguing fascination with certain organic entities, such as the Bugfacers, whom they keep as genetically modified subjects for their own amusement and sometimes treating them as toys or objects. Despite their initial apathy toward organic life, a faction within Gravitor society emerged that recognized the possibility of organic existence and advocated for improved treatment of their organic subjects. In the end, the Gravitors came into a devastating conflict with the Astromorphs. Astromorphs. Astromorphs emerged after the spaces joined their arcs into a single colossus world composed of zero-gravity bubbles. As a result, their physical forms underwent significant changes, becoming slender and elongated, with appendages replacing single digits, and these appendages were not used for movement because the Astromorphs had specialized sphincters that propelled them through their unique environment. However, the most notable transformations occurred within their brains. Liberated from the constraints of gravity, their cognitive capacities expanded beyond the limitations of their terrestrial ancestors. This expansion enabled them to conceive abstract concepts that were entirely novel and foreign to both their post-human relatives and human predecessors. Consequently, the Astromorphs achieved remarkable advancements in philosophy and science. Expanding their dominion, the Astromorphs constructed smaller subarcs and embarked on the colonization of stellar systems, abstaining from the traditional approach of colonizing planets. Instead, they established a presence in the outer realms of star systems, silently observing the less developed civilizations. When encountering the Second Empire of Man, established by the species such as Sotiriaks and the Killerfolk, the very nature of the Astromorphs initially evoked fear. However, it soon became evident that the Astromorphs exhibited no interest in engaging with the Second Empire. As such, they were accepted as omnipotent forces of nature and left undisturbed. The Astromorphs continued their self-evolution, with their giant brains unfurling into wing-like structures and their finger-derived limbs transforming into intricate sails and legs. Following the annihilation of the Second Empire of Man by the Gravitors, the Astromorphs coexisted with the Gravitors for quite some time. While the Gravitors inhabited planets, the descendants of the Astromorphs claimed the void. However, an internal conflict within the Gravitor Empire resulted in a war with the Astromorph, and the latter emerged victorious. In the aftermath of the conflict, the surviving Gravitors were transformed into the new machines by the Astromorph descendants. Additionally, the descendants of the Astromorphs assumed the role of creator gods. They undertook the terraformation and repopulation of the planets within the Milky Way with various descendant species of the subjects, or the Astromorph descendants. Killerfolk. The Killerfolk were a post-human species that emerged from the predators. As their sapiens developed, the Killerfolk underwent changes in physical traits, such as a reduction in thumb claws and saber teeth, but these features still persisted in smaller and more delicate forms. Religion played a central role in the culture of the Killerfolk, often revolving around hunting and warfare. Their religious practices frequently involved violent orgies and were intertwined with their overall lifestyle. Within their society, esteemed status was conferred upon exceptional hunters and warriors, who were regarded as nobility. Periodic gatherings of nomadic warriors took place, where the hunting of domesticated livestock derived from their former prey formed a significant part of the ritual. During an era of industrial advancement, a specific nation pack of the Killerfolk emerged as pioneers in factory farming, embracing organized state structures, secularism, and novel technologies. This development resulted in a societal divide, with a progressive faction devoted to factory herding and a conservative segment upholding traditional hunting states. The tensions between these factions occasionally escalated, almost leading to world wars. However, the Killerfolk managed to bypass these challenges, ensuring their survival and eventual reunification. The history of the Killerfolk's world is marked by periods of darkness, which included fallen kingdoms, ruined cultures, and buried dark ages. Furthermore, the Killerfolk established contact with the Sotiriaks through radio communication, and together with the tool breeders, they laid the foundation for the Second Galactic Empire. Over the course of millions of years, other post-human species joined the burgeoning empire. Spanning approximately 80 million years, the Second Empire expanded across the galaxy, driven by the collective efforts of its diverse members. Despite never having personal encounters, the species colonized various planets, contributing to the empire's growth and development. However, the Second Empire's preparedness for extraterrestrial invasions didn't account for potential hostilities from other post-human species. Tragically, the Killerfolk and their allied counterparts were swiftly and decisively eradicated by the Gravitors, who sought to conquer the stars as part of their interstellar campaign. Modular Person. The Modular Persons originated from the Colonials and evolved into specialized cell colonies. Within their society, certain sapient Colonials assumed the role of core individuals, responsible for directing and coordinating other specialized Colonials. Through a process of adaptation and assimilation, the Modular Persons expanded their influence across their planet, gradually forming a distinct civilization. As their society advanced, the Modular Persons constructed sprawling industrialized megacities, where each individual comprised a colony composed of of various specialized colonials. The ability to separate and recombine their cellular components enabled them to generate new individuals with specific functions. Despite the ever-changing configurations of their physical forms, the modular persons maintained a consistent mental and cultural unity. The societal structure of the modular persons embraced principles of equality and fostered a utopian environment where all individuals were content to be part of a collective whole. Joining the Second Galactic Empire founded by the Killerfolk and the Sotiriaks, the modular persons represented the second wave of post-humans to become part of this vast interstellar alliance. Blind folk. Following the Q's invasion, many star people sought refuge underground, but were eventually discovered and transformed into blind cave dwellers by the Q. The subterranean world created by the Q housed a unique ecosystem, teeming with various giant blind insects descended from vermin, oversized avian and rodent species, as well as extensive fields of fungi. This intricate ecosystem also supported predators such as crocodile-like fish and large predatory bats, while the ceilings of the colossal caves were adorned with bioluminescent fungi and other luminescent creatures. Inhabitants of these lightless regions, the blind folk, lacked the ability to perceive light, and gradually their eyes had become entirely absent. Instead, they relied on other sensory mechanisms for navigation and orientation, using loud noises, elongated fingers, and whiskers. Regrettably, the blind folk and the rest of their subterranean ecosystem met their demise due to the rearrangement of the continental plates, which led to the collapse and destruction of the immense caves. Finger fishers. The finger fishers originated from the star people that inhabited a planet with vast oceans, numerous archipelagos, and smaller continents. Following the intervention of the Q, these star people were reverted to a feral and non-sapient state. In the absence of the Q, they underwent an evolution, resulting in the emergence of diverse forms, one of which became known as the finger fishers. These were coastal-dwelling creatures that used their elongated middle finger and their distinctive hooked claw for fishing, which gave them their name. Their mouths evolved into narrow snouts with needle-like teeth, which eased the capture of slippery prey. Over time, the finger fishers underwent further evolutionary changes, branching out into distinct species with a wide range of adaptations. Some of these variations included fully aquatic forms, while others developed the ability to fly. The most important of these new species were the sail people. Sail people. Rather than using their elongated fingers and membranous skin for flight, as observed in some other offshoots of the finger fishers, the sail people used these features for sailing across the waters of their homeworld, which eventually gave them their name. The distinctive sail-like membranes, spanning from their elongated arms, allowed the sail people to travel the oceans with remarkable efficiency. Over time, their dual tongues evolved to serve as tools for catching prey, eventually developing dexterity. As they navigated the vast and endless expanses of their watery environment, the sail people also developed exceptional memory and, ultimately, achieved sapience. Due to the predominantly aquatic nature of their planet, with scattered islands serving as the only land masses, the sail people's populations became fragmented, leading to the emergence of numerous tribes. These tribes often engaged in conflict and warfare with one another. Nomadic groups pursued lives as pirates, while warrior societies lived in a cycle of endless wars. However, a significant turning point occurred when a particular tribe adopted industrialization, using advanced technology to develop superior weapons. This necessitated the establishment of a structured state society to support their advancements. With this transition came a shift toward enlightened thinking and the gradual propagation of the concept of peace between tribes throughout the planet, ultimately leading to the unification of the Sail people. Strider. The Striders were a post-human species that lived on a Jovian moon that had 1/5 of Earth's gravity. On this celestial satellite, the local ecosystem comprised remnants of former human civilizations, including pets and vermin, and the Striders, as colossal humanoid beings roamed across the desolate landscape. The moon's unique environment had grass towering up to 10 meters in height and trees that reached skyscraper-like proportions. Despite the fragility of their anatomical nature, which rendered them vulnerable to even strong gusts of wind, the Striders managed to survive. However, their existence took a tragic turn approximately 2 million years after the departure of the Q. During this period, poultry, originally brought to the moon by the Star People as a food source, underwent evolutionary changes, eventually evolving into giant predatory birds. Lacking any defensive mechanisms, the Striders became targets of these formidable avian predators. The relentless hunting pressure exerted by the predatory chickens ultimately led to the extinction of the Striders. Do you think chickens can actually become raptors? You know, they say that raptors ultimately evolved into today's chickens, so I was just wondering. Terra Sapiens. The Terra Sapiens were intelligent aerial creatures and resembled storks or eagles or a mix of both. Unlike other species within the flyer lineage, the Terra Sapiens maintain their ability to fly while also redeveloping sapience. This unique combination allowed them to establish a cosmopolitan civilization, marked by the construction of cities resembling nestling or perching aviaries. One notable aspect of Terra Sapien society was their impressive intellectual achievements. Despite their focus on aerial pursuits, they managed to rediscover nuclear science and foster a rich cultural and philosophical heritage. Their libraries were renowned for their extensive collections, reflecting a deep contemplation of mortality due to the inherent vulnerability of their supercharged hearts, which rendered them susceptible to cardiovascular disease. On average, Terra Sapiens had a relatively short lifespan, with individuals typically succumbing to these health complications before reaching 23 Terran years. Terra Sapien society was known for productivity and early maturation, with individuals reaching maturity by the age of 2 years and middle age by 15 to 16 years. Interestingly, they only had a single 10-day vacation throughout their entire lives. The nature of their aerial abilities and the ease of information diffusion rendered social boundaries and discrimination largely irrelevant. Ampycephali. The Ampycephali were a sapient extragalactic species, and they had a major role in the interactions of humanity during the establishment of the empire of the Astromorphs, Terrestrials, and Subjects. This empire encompassed the entirety of the Milky Way galaxy, prompting the denizens to cautiously seek contact with neighboring galaxies, bearing in mind their history with prior alien invasions, notably the Q. So yeah, the Ampycephali did not really originate from star people. These remarkable beings exhibited a unique anatomy and resembled giant serpents with heads on both ends of their bodies. Notably, one head housed an additional body with arms and another head, enabling them to manipulate objects and engage with their environment. Much like humanity, the Ampycephali boasted a rich and diverse history. After demonstrating mutual maturity, they became the first extraterrestrial civilization to establish peaceful contact with humanity, marking a significant milestone in intergalactic relations. Together, the United Galaxies achieved a monumental feat by overcoming the Q threat. They devised innovative strategies such as the construction of artificial shells to protect their suns, as well as the establishment of a network of wormholes that revolutionized interstellar travel, rendering it an effortless endeavor. Lopsider. The Lopsiders lived on a planet with significantly higher gravity compared to Earth or Mars. Naturally, they underwent genetic modifications that allowed them to adapt and survive in their new environment. Their bodies became flattened and resembled flatfish, with all their facial features, including both eyes, positioned on a single side of their heads. This new upper side housed their eyes, while the lower side consisted of paddle-like limbs for crawling and an elongated arm that served both as a manipulative tool and a sensory organ. One of the unique visual traits of the Lopsiders was that while one eye was fixed upward, the other eye had the ability to scan the surroundings, providing them with a forward-facing field of view. Over time, the Lopsiders diversified into numerous distinct species within the demanding conditions of their high-gravity environment. One notable offshoot of the Lopsiders was the Asymmetric people. As they embarked on the path towards civilization, the Lopsiders managed to domesticate certain indigenous species on their homeworld, marking a turning point in their cultural and technological development. Terrestrials. Terrestrial spaces, or simply Terrestrials, emerged from the Astromorphs as part of their mission to oversee and safeguard the newly populated worlds inhabited by the descendants of the Subjects. Their creation was aimed at preventing the recurrence of genocidal events similar to the one perpetrated by the Gravitors. Unlike the Astromorphs, the Terrestrials possessed stronger limbs, which were modifications of their fingers, enabling them to walk. Additionally, their brains were comparatively smaller, a practical adaptation to function effectively in gravitational environments. However, the Terrestrials acted much like demigods, and this led a few of them to occasionally deviate from the wise plans of the Astromorphs. Some Terrestrials assumed godlike roles, formed religions centered around themselves, and exploited their subject populations. While these actions were not necessarily ethical, they did contribute to greater stability. Tool breeders. The tool breeders originated from the swimmers, a species reliant on symbiotic relationships for their technological needs due to their inability to utilize fire. Even before achieving full sapience, the swimmers engaged in symbiotic interactions with other organisms, domesticating certain species to serve as substitutes for conventional technology. As the swimmers evolved, their symbiotic relationships developed into sophisticated forms of genetic engineering, enabling the tool breeders to create all essential tools and resources from living organisms or, later on, from STEM stem cells. Their technological advancements encompassed a range of innovations, including heart-like creatures, which were organisms that functioned as pumps, delivering nutritional fluids to living buildings and machines, providing them with sustenance. Shell-like buildings, which were constructed structures that resembled shells and were made of organic materials to create functional living spaces. Bioluminescent light, which was harnessed by the bioluminescence of certain organisms. Cephalopod skin televisions. Medical sea squirts. The tool breeders used sea squirts with specialized properties for medical purposes, possibly involving therapeutic applications or advanced diagnostic tools. Oxygen filtering crustaceans. Unfortunately enough, the tool breeders were killed by the Gravitors. Subject: all tomorrows. Subjects were genetically engineered species created by the Gravitors as part of their conquest and domination of other worlds. The Gravitors, lacking an understanding of the intrinsic value of biological life forms, saw genetic manipulation as a routine practice, akin to recycling or rebuilding technology. They used the conquered Bugfacers as a basis for their genetic experiments, transforming them into various types and variants known as subjects. So, essentially, the Gravitors were doing what the Q once did. These subjects served different purposes within the Gravital society. Some variants were used as laborers, while others served as domestic servants. Certain subjects were even modified for specific utilities, such as cell cultures for gas exchange and water filtration. In the pursuit of entertainment and artistic expression, extreme subspecies and variants of subjects were created, designed for performances and demonstrations. Examples included creatures capable of playing modified fingers as musical instruments and engaging in vocalizations. Additionally, certain subspecies were selectively bred for sacrificial purposes. However, within the Gravital Empire, factions began to emerge that developed a more enlightened understanding of life's universality and the shared origins of organic and mechanical beings. Initially, these factions operated in seclusion, creating subjects that were granted more autonomy. Snake Person. The snake people were worm-descended mammalian tree snakes. Originating from a climate-changed homeworld, these creatures adapted to the cooler conditions, enabling the reclamation of the surface world. Among them, one particular species of tree snakes evolved sapiens and had spirally coiled brains and a single hand located at the end of their tails, a vestigial trait inherited from their ancestral feet. In parallel with their distant humanoid ancestors, the snake people established agricultural world empires, underwent industrial revolutions, conducted social experiments, navigated through world wars and civil conflicts, and ultimately experienced the processes of globalization. The cities inhabited by the snake people were unique and distinctive in their design. They lived in intricate networks of pipe-like tunnels and constructed three-dimensional railroads and windowless, hole-like buildings. Notably, the absence of open plazas or spacious areas within their cities was attributed to species-wide agoraphobia, or the fear of being in situations where escape might be difficult. Artistic expression within snake people's culture took various forms. Books served as a medium for transmitting knowledge and narratives, while they also listened to and appreciated vibrational ground music. Hedonist, all tomorrows. The Hedonists were created and maintained by the Q as their pets on a secluded planet. Thriving in this idyllic world, the Hedonists lived in a landscape composed of picturesque islands adorned with fruit-bearing trees and surrounded by lakes abundant in bacterial manna. Not burdened by responsibilities or the need to care for their environment, their cognitive capacities were limited, comparable to that of a 3-year-old child. But unlike 3-year-olds, the Hedonists enjoyed getting physical. To control population growth and prevent overcrowding on their planet, the Q devised a unique reproductive mechanism for the Hedonists. In order to conceive, Hedonists were required to engage in an extensive number of matings with different males over a duration spanning more than a decade. Following the departure of the Q, the Hedonists continued to thrive on their planet for approximately 1 million years. Later, a group of fast-breeding mutants emerged among the Hedonists, leading to the repopulation of a new world and the eventual emergence of a distinct post-human species known as the Sotiriaks. Parasite, all tomorrows. The parasites coexisted on their homeworld alongside another species of primitive creatures resembling apes or Australopithecines, which served as potential hosts. Within the parasite species, various distinct forms emerged, ranging from tortoise-like bloodsuckers to fist-sized organisms that sustained themselves by attaching to their hosts. For a remarkable span of 40 million years, the Q closely observed this world, ensuring the preservation of the parasites. Their purpose was to utilize these parasitic creatures as a means to punish the other humans who had fiercely resisted the Q invasion. Upon the departure of the Q, many of the parasites experienced decline and extinction as their hosts gradually developed strategies to counter their presence. Hosts learned to drown, burn, or even consume the parasites, resulting in their own survival at the expense of the parasitic organisms. But one species used a unique reproductive strategy by residing within the wombs of their female hosts, ultimately leading to the sterilization and demise of both host and parasite. Only a select few parasite species manage to adapt and ensure their long-term survival by regulating the infestation of their hosts. By avoiding excessive overpopulation and mortality of their hosts, the surviving parasite species secured their own continued existence. Solusapient. The Solusapients were a sapient species that originated from the livestock of the lizard herders, who themselves remained non-sapient. Their homeworld has abundant ruins left behind by the Star People and Q civilizations. Initially, the Solusapients perceived these remnants as natural formations, but subsequent generations discovered their true nature through the examination of writings and artifacts. They embraced the cultural identity of humans after uncovering their connection to the ancient civilizations. Exploring the ruins also provided the Solusapients with insights into the fate of their ancestors at the hands of the Q. Some individuals developed religious beliefs based on this premise, seeking divine protection from external threats. Others embraced conservative ideologies, while a third faction pursued technological advancement, despite the potential risks involved. Following centuries of conflict, the progressive factions emerged victorious and expanded their influence, knowledge, and activities. The development of radio communications marked a significant milestone for the Solusapients, as they became part of the third wave of post-humans, joining the Second Galactic Empire, originally founded by the Killerfolk and the Sotiriaks. Sotiriak. The Sotiriaks emerged from the remnants of the Hedonists following cataclysmic events that transformed their homeworld. Originally inhabiting a small continent similar in size to Iceland, their planet underwent seismic shifts and expansions, resulting in larger landmasses comparable in size to Australia. Concurrently, the cataclysms generated significant amounts of ash, leading to a decline in plant life and a subsequent decrease in the Hedonist population. Amidst this devastation, a select group of fast-breeding mutants evolved as the survivors and successfully repopulated the planet with various species. They possessed a tail-like appendage composed of pelvic muscles. Initially, the Sotiriaks existed within 3 empires, which eventually consolidated into 2. Over time, these empires fragmented, giving rise to myriad countries. However, the Sotiriaks eventually reunited under a unified world order. Embracing the hedonistic tendencies of their non-sapient ancestors, the Sotiriaks created a new paradise where they reveled in life's pleasures. Festivals, concerts, and orgies became regular occurrences, imbuing their society with an atmosphere of celebration and enjoyment. Asymmetric Person. The Asymmetric people originated from the Lopsiders following the departure of the Q. Notable features of their society included the construction of flat bunker-style buildings, which served as entrances to extensive underground cities. Furthermore, they made significant advancements in space travel, enabling the exploration of other planets within their solar system. During their explorations, the Asymmetric people discovered planetary conditions similar to their homeworld, although the gravitational force differed from what they were accustomed to. Motivated by the desire to adapt to these varying environments, the Asymmetric people engaged in millennia-long experiments and bioengineering endeavors. Through these efforts, they gradually transformed their physical attributes to suit the demands of their new planetary homes. Bugfacer. The Bugfacers evolved from the Insectophagi, and through the course of their evolution, the leathery faceplates of the Insectophagi gradually ossified and fused with their jaws, resulting in a distinct facial structure resembling their insect prey. Additionally, their hands underwent a reduction in digits and transformed into pincer-like appendages, further contributing to their superficial resemblance to insects. During their evolutionary journey, a significant genetic throwback occurred, leading to the re-emergence of certain genes inherited from their Star People ancestors. This genetic development gave rise to a subspecies with slightly larger brains, enabling them to devise crude stone tools for more effective access to insect colonies. Over time, the civilization evolved into what became known as the Bugfacers. Similar to many other sapient species, the Bugfacers underwent successive cycles of societal development, transitioning from agrarian societies based on hive farming to colonial endeavors and industrialization, and eventually experiencing globalized world states marked by massive world wars. The Bugfacers engaged in numerous orbital and terrestrial conflicts, ultimately managing to repel the invaders. However, this invasion resulted in the introduction of native life forms from their homeworld, instilling interspecies xenophobia within the Bugfacers society. Pandora is an extinct species of therizinosaur that once lived on one of the colonized worlds of the Star People. Its discovery provided a crucial clue to the Star People about aliens and indicated the presence of earlier civilizations on the said planet. Pandora exhibited clear ancestral ties to Earth's dinosaurs, distinguishing it from the native species on the planet characterized by 3 limbs, a copper-based skeletal system, and hydrostatically operated muscles. Unlike the native creatures, Pandora possessed 4 limbs and a calcium-based skeleton. Its claws were well developed and suited for digging, aiding in the search for food resources. But it was this discovery that brought about the mess called Q. Marvelous verdict. In conclusion, the world of All Tomorrows is a rich one, with each species having its own unique evolutionary trajectory, societal development, and encounters with external forces. We witness the rise and fall of civilizations, the clash of ideologies, and the profound impact of contact with other extragalactic species. The exploration of themes such as genetic engineering, sapience, interstellar conquest, and the consequences of post-human existence provokes at least me to think of the consequences of making contact with aliens. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.